YouTube? Hello to my fellow Rumble users. Today we're going to be talking about Detroit Become Human. This is kind of like a review and a reflection about the game. What I like about it first, though, is that you get to make your own choices. You can choose a pacifist standing or choose a revolution, or you can choose a number of all different endings. There's even a secret Kamsky ending that I heard. But what I love most about this game, y'all, is you get to see who becomes deviant. Make if Connor remains a deviant, boom, or if he remains a machine. All right, I love both ways, but I definitely love Connor's eventual transformation to become a deviant and join the android revolution. And I love how the game just it has multiple storylines. Imagine we're visiting one crime scene, the next day we're visiting another. Next day we're in a bar trying to find Hank, and I love the game. And I definitely love the game when it comes to all these mini events because they all tie into one thing, calling the Android Revolution. But what I love most about this game, y'all, is that number one, adversity and autonomy sometimes come hand in hand. What I've learned from the game is that genuine, true autonomy and freedom to make your own choices, not under the pressure of other people, it's forged through adversity. It is Autonomy is a right of its own, but it's a right that's forged through adversity, through trouble. Say for example, your parents want you to go to college. They're gonna make you go to college. They're forcing you to go to college, but you want to take trade school instead. Or say for example, you're a teen and your dad's forcing you to work as his lawyer in his law firm later on. What I've realized from this chat is that the ability to choose your own choices, especially in that case, or let's say for example Asian parents forcing their kids to take this path instead of letting their kids grow naturally, I get it though, because it's one of adversity, whether it be the Asian kid or that be the teen that's being pressured to go into the law firm as an adult, to challenge the parents for the kid to take their own path. That is a form of adversity. A kid that's being pressured or bullied, that's a form of adversity. Say for example a kid did this instead of doing this at some sort of game and everyone makes fun of him, but the kid knows that he needed to do that and he wanted to do this from his own choice, that he liked to do it. And I know that's like a broad example, but that's another form of adversity, learning to make your own choices despite the pressure. Right. I love this because at least Marcus indirectly teaches us the complexity of autonomy. Everyone has to have it, but it's forged through trouble. It's forged through anger. It's forged through the most complex of situations. That's why, Chad, I think of everyone who's going through something as a Marcus of their own, abstractly speaking, every person who's being forced to take this life path instead of their own is kind of a Marcus. A Marcus that's advocating and going to a demonstration, going to a protest, just as the kids in real life are demonstrating to their parents that they don't want to take this path. What I've realized, chat, is that these kids, whether that's you, whether that's me, whether that's anyone here, you don't have to follow this program. You don't have to follow what they want you to do. You can follow your own path, but it's going to be adverse. There's gonna be adversity to follow you, but you're leading yourself to an authentic life. And leading yourself to an authentic life is far more important than living what someone else wanted you to be. It's about who you want to be, not what they want you to be. That's what I've realized about that. Mostly everyone is a Marcus of their own. Everyone fighting through their own adversity, fighting through pain, maybe not getting enough love from their parents. They are Marcuses of their own, which will eventually create their own form as deviants. Parents may call them deviants, just as in Detroit Become Human, but deviants here is simply an outdated term for authentic living. Alright, in at least this case right here. That's what I've learned about Detroit Become Human. Alright, it's the idea of genuineness, of autonomy, of freedom to express. It's forged through adversity and trouble, but it's going to result in something that can never be replicated again, an authentic life, right? That's what I love about this, because You get something that no one wanted you to get, but you get what you want to get. That's what I love the best. Alright, so that's what I've learned about Detroit Become Human. That's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. The second lesson here is that violence is kind of encoded into human genes. Alright, whether that be through the primal instinct, let's say the lion's about to attack you, or that be through political disagreements, as you guys were seeing in the Detroit Become Human video game in itself. Right, people had their differing stances. Even the police officers and SWAT officers, they were shooting at the androids. All right, that's what makes it very interesting for me, at least, is that it's a complex. There was a lot of complex stances, even within the violence. At least, people had differing views about the androids. Some thought that they were simply a nuisance. Some thought that they were still people to be genuinely respected. And it's a lot of different stances here that kind of divided humanity. But ultimately, we chose the peaceful end. Right? We chose the pacifist ending. I know a lot of people might ask me, why not fight back? They were shooting at you, quote unquote. I chose the pacifist ending because it resulted in a long term victory. It resulted in the fact that I'm gonna get the last laugh. That's why President Warren ordered them to stand down, because public opinion was being supportive. So I got the moral victory trophy at the end of the last video that I had here on this channel. That's why I chose that ending. Alright? Violence is encoded through human genes. Alright? For example, let me pull up even a controversial one right now. Imagine Charlie Kirk. Alright, Charlie Kirk was shot. He was shot by someone who had a sniper rifle. That in itself, to shoot someone, is a form of violence within its own self. It proves that violence is encoded into human genes. It's encoded, whether it's through differences, political differences, ideological differences, or anything that you can name. Anything, even mild disagreements. That's why a lot of stuff, imagine like Hume is someone else getting shot because they had this or that. Or there was like a smaller example, I don't remember what it was of it, but violence, it's encoded into human genes. But what I've also learned about it is to respond with it back with empathy is one of the strongest moral stances to ever take, but it's one that requires kind of like a pure heart. Alright? An empathetic stance means that we have to understand both sides, step out of the polarization, step out to understand people to who they really are, not what society paints them as, not what polarization paints them as. But to see empathy is to see the human, see the person, whatever they're going through, see the android as someone who has feelings, as someone, even if they're on the other side of given arguments, that they're still people, alright? That's why to respond with violence with empathy, just as we did in Detroit Become Human, is a pacifist attempt that eventually succeeded within its own right, at least in the game. That's definitely the third lesson that I learned here. Well, second lesson is that violence is encoded into human genes, but it in itself is already a very complex idea. It's still subject to debate today as humanity in itself shifts viewpoints to viewpoints every day, and everyone has their own ideological differences. I'll be honest with that. That's definitely what the game has taught me. But what I've learned, at least from the game within its own right, is that it's a complex storyline. Some people become deviants. Some androids, most of them become deviants. Some don't. Alright. It also taught me about how deviancy, I think I already said this before, how it's important to overcome pressure to become authentic. It's important to make your own decisions, even if everyone wants you to take this decision instead of that. Because, as I said, y'all, everybody's a Marcus of their own. Alright, but you have to learn to make your own decisions. That's what leads to an authentic life. That's definitely what I've seen from the game. In Detroit Become Human, what I've also learned here is that humanity, in its own lesson, at least, it's complex.